Well, thank you very, very much for the invitation. Just going to go through uh, about three different sort of uh, projects that we've been involved with just the last few years. So kind of the newest killer whale related things that we've been dealing with, and to just sort of generally call it killer whale health concerns, although it's more of an update of specifically what we've been up to. Just going to acknowledge my co-authors or folks that were forced to hand over slides and help me throw this together at the last minute, as always. So Krista Tang was one of our veterinary fellows at the aquarium some years ago. She's now vice president of veterinary services at the Shed Aquarium in Chicago. And Joe Gatos is a good friend of mine, and we've been buddies for very, very many years. And he's a close colleague that heads up the Sea Doc Society program, which is a University of California Davis initiative on Orcas Island here in the San Juans, specifically having to do with marine ecosystem health. So we tend to hang out quite often. And so the first section here is about skin diseases. This is based on a paper that Joe and I were on that just came out not too long ago, and I believe was the reason that I was contacted initially by the group. And it is interesting stuff, and maybe not the most interesting stuff we deal with, I guess, but it's not so bad. So we'll deal with skin disease and in killer whales, particularly southern resident killer whales, which we were very, very interested in. So what we were interested in was things that we can see from a distance in killer whales that we deal with. Of course, the southern resident killer whales are considered to be a highly endangered group of animals that are found here in local Vancouver and Puget Sound waters for at least part of the year. There are something in the neighborhood of about 75 individuals left. That number goes up and goes down, but kind of hovers around 75 for now quite a long time. So we're quite limited in, as far as veterinarians and our diagnostic ability. But one thing we do get a lot of are photos. And there are a lot of researchers out there that follow these whales, these particular southern resident killer whales, and know a lot about them, know the individuals. I already heard folks on this call, identifying individuals by how they look. And I can't do that, but folks are obviously quite attached to the whales. They know a lot about them. And there are quite an archive of photos. So this group of veterinarians, we decided to see if we could do something about cataloging the types of skin diseases or skin lesions, more appropriately, that we could see in these animals. So looking at skin of cetaceans, and these are the dolphins, whales, and porpoises of the world. We call them cetaceans as a group. Looking at skin diseases and using them as a health indicator is nothing new. And studies have been conducted in bottlenose dolphins, guana dolphins, minke whales, and North Atlantic right whales, as a small example, kind of looking at associating skin disease with a variety of lesions. So nothing new. So we decided, we could probably do the same sort of thing. And certainly, as I said, certain conditions have been associated with mortality. So maybe not the cause of mortality, but a way to recognize animals that might be in trouble. Looking at something called swath lesions in North Atlantic right whales. These are often associated with the fatal condition. All 6 of the animals identified in this particular paper with these swath lesions had either been entangled previously or were entangled in fishing gear when the lesion appeared. So it seemed to be suspect with poor condition, not the cause of the poor nutrition is necessarily, that was probably something to do with the entanglement, but a sign that the whale was in trouble, I suppose, is the way to look at this. So what causes them? Well, often we don't know, because again, it's hard for us to get hands-on and look very closely and take biopsies and submit to a pathologist for histopathology and culture and virology and all that good stuff that us veterinarians like to do to get an appropriate diagnosis on things. So we're often limited that way. So anyway, the point here was in this group of right whales, this was associated with bad things. All 6 of those are suspected to be dead. 4 of those are known to be dead. The other 2 have not been seen and are suspected to have passed away. Another example, in Chilean dolphins, there are these expansive annular lesions that have been thought to be potentially lethal. There's no necessarily cause or identified in these animals, but once they get these lesions, they kind of disappear. So our study, what we depended on exclusively were digital images that were captured by the Center for Whale Research based in the San Juan Islands from around 2004 to 2016. The Center for Whale Research sort of began actual digital photographs in 2004. So what, there were a total of about 5,463 images that were included in the study. So these are images that had something that was suspect to be wrong with the skin that were included. That represented about 125 animals broken down between the three pods, 38 from J pod, 26 from K pod, and 61 from L pod. And then once we kind of had gotten that library of lesions, we started kind of scoring them. And there was a group of 4 of us. So it was Joe and myself. There was Stephen Rafferty, who's a pathologist with the BC Provincial Animal Health Center, and Hendrik Nolens, who used to be at SeaWorld, but now is at the San Diego Zoological Society. So the 4 of us and score these lesions. We kind of distribute them in terms of severity and kind of we tried to give them an ID, I suppose. So we kind of figured out 6 quite unique lesions. 2 of them were known based on work with other killer whales, and especially killer whales under human care. Sorry, I'll just do one moment. I'm on a call there, buddy. I do have a teenager in the house, and he does not realize sometimes that his dad is in the house at the same time. Anyway, so 2 of those conditions, fetal folds and calf sloughing, were something we consider quite normal and found in every whale. And then we kind of tried to I'll show you what the other ones were and how they classify them. But sometimes we identified up to 1 to 4 lesions per image, right? So looking at these things, the first kind of category was something we call gray patches. Not a really exciting name, right? Because you can imagine these 4 goofballs sitting around a giant screen for quite a few days together, getting kind of giddy. You can imagine we tried to come up with all sorts of clever names, but gray patches was the best we could come up with. So maybe we needed someone more imaginative on the team. So these guys we defined these as kind of multifocal or multifocally extensive gray or pale gray discoloration that can appear targetoid and later stage in progression. So they can kind of progress to these target-like lesions, and they're kind of the most common. And they were seen by observers on 98% of observation days. So not necessarily the same whale or the same group of whales, but on 98% of the days they went out, this is the Center for Whale Research, they found animals with this type of lesion. So, and my buddy Joe thought, well, maybe there was some kind of, tribal scarring thing, and then some wannabe punk kid that, punk killer whale kid decorating themselves, but he's, not that smart. Anyway, sometimes, well, most often, about 6 weeks or so, they kind of regress, and that's kind of the progression there, right? So kind of quite extensive, same whale, about 6 weeks later, they start to regress. And then, which is good, right? And then we have these things called gray target lesions. Again, not very imaginative. And so these are kind of defined as multifocal to coalescing lesions with kind of a curvilinear or serpiginous, excuse me, so serpent-like margins, right? External margins are very well delineated, and they can kind of progress into these great patches that are well circumscribed. So a little bit different than the previous lesion, but that's how we kind of describe it. And this was really the second most common lesion seen. It was correlated with those gray patches that I described a little bit earlier. So we thought quite likely associated, if not a variant of the same kind of lesion. So 3 months later, kind of disappearing. 2 days, that kind of thing. And then we have these pinpoint black discolorations. And these things were kind of pitted black erosions. They can be seen with peripheral gray discoloration, and often associated with rake marks. So these kind of linear lines that you're seeing there, they're very classic sort of rake marks. So that's usually one whale kind of aggressing on another one or teaching them a lesson. It's just sort of normal social behavior with cetaceans. Raking is kind of the thing they do to kind of assert dominance or to tell calves, no, this is wrong. Or I think sometimes it's just males fighting for fun, and then sometimes I guess it's males fighting for real. So you can kind of see these pinpoint black lesions inside the rake mark, and that's kind of what we're describing. And that was kind of the third most common lesion that we saw. You can kind of see them here, right? So pitted black lesions, again, often associated with those rake marks. And then you can see these gray target lesions on the same animal. And I think I mentioned before, we'd often have slides with a number of different lesions, 1 to 4 lesions happening on the same animal sometimes. And then erosions were kind of rare, about 1% of the animal. This is kind of a normal skin. The skin isn't discolored, but you'll see a depression, right? There layers of skin is missing. So well circumscribed, so well delineated, but no discoloration. So erosions, right? And then we had something we called cephalopod lesions, also rare. You can kind of see these, sort of interesting. If you can imagine, so cephalopod, octopus, squid, with arms, with the suction cups, you can kind of imagine that those cup arm wrapping around and leaving these kind of fairly regular dispersed lesions in a linear fashion, but kind of decreasing in diameter as they progress down the body of the animal, right? Kind of like you would imagine an octopus or a squid, and that's actually what we thought it was, because it was rare, it was kind of interesting. We thought maybe they're a Humboldt squid, are very, very common in the area. And it could be, something that happens with hunting. Now, what we've also seen with these guys is they'll carry the octopus or the squid on their back on occasion. So we thought maybe that's what these are remnants of. So kind of interesting, right? Also kind of rare. This is what we call orange on gray. Now, honestly, on some occasion, we just thought it was light that was bouncing back on us, and just sort of shadowing in a weird kind of way. But in some animals, it seemed very real. So again, we didn't biopsy them. We can't kind of grab onto them, but we do know that like epidermal diatoms, so algae, for lack of a better description, can create an orange film or hue in Dall's porpoise. We know that. We've seen it in harbor porpoise, bottlenose dolphins, and Guiana dolphins as well. And so we assumed that was the same sort of thing. So just diatoms that are in that superficial skin layer and causing a yellowing of the animal, kind of like all of us in Vancouver getting algae growing up on the sides of our house. Path epithelial sloughing. This is a normal kind of condition. It's focal, patchy, erosive epithelial hyperplasia. So the skin kind of thickens and then starts sloughing off. And this just happens in growing calves. It's very, very normal. It probably has to do with a high metabolic rate, a high cell turnover, and growth. So you can kind of see a yellow or tan kind of appearance to it too, as those superficial layers are thickened and kind of die, and they kind of get a tinge to them. But this is normal. This we see in almost every calf of every cetacean species we know, so killer whales included. You kind of see it kind of as it goes. So it's the same animal, February 25th to March 12th. You can see it kind of disappearing. So usually about 1 to 3 months of duration is how long that takes. And again, young animals all the time. And fetal folds. These kind of literally folds. So when these guys are in the uterus, they are kind of bent over for a long period of time. Just before birth, they straighten out. Usually coming out tail first. during birth, not always, but usually. And that sort of fold right in that location is very, very common for very young animals. So, and that disappears quite quickly. So that was kind of the talk. Again, I'm not sure how exciting it is because we don't have huge like diagnoses on anything, but this is the kind of the sciencey part of this thing. So no real pretty killer whale pictures, I'm afraid, but I guess for some of us, this is kind of where it gets interesting. So we modeled the top three lesions that we described, and that's the gray patches, gray target lesions, and pinpoint black lesions. So like, you know, we could have been more creative, I guess, but what you're stuck with who you got here. Sorry. So and we found that there's actually some difference between the pods, which is kind of interesting, right? So for example, the most common gray patches, the point prevalence, so that's the top graph there, is higher for K-pod, and that's the same for the gray target lesion. So for whatever reason, K-pod tends to have a higher number of occurrences of that particular lesion. But you don't really see a big difference by age or sex, right? So it definitely seems to be you know, a pod difference as opposed to an age or sex difference. But pinpoint black, they're much more common in old males. Young females and young males are similar to rake marks, right? So, and that sort of makes sense, and that's why we kind of figure they have a lot to do with rake marks, the way that modeled out. So, I guess you know, the take home here is we, as I try to say a few times, we don't really know what's causing these, but when you look at the occurrence or what we call the point prevalence of all three lesions by pod, these are the color differences here, and time, there's a definite increase in gray patches and gray target lesions over the past decade and a half. So that's kind of interesting. And that's concerning to us, right? So there is a change over time and an increase in occurrence of these things over time. And we know that these animals are struggling to find food. We know they have a whole lot of challenges. We know they're not doing awesome. So when you see a condition increasing in frequency over a period of time associated with a group of animals that's not doing well, that is kind of you know, concerning. So again, we don't think these lesions are the cause of the decline, but much like in the, you know, the northern right whale example we gave earlier there, we think that the fact they're increasing occurrence suggests that animals' immune systems may not be as robust as they were in prior decades. So the next step really is to see if the lesion prevalence correlates with the individuals being thin, right? And so we can do that by comparing lesion prevalence to actual body condition of individual animals. So that's kind of the next sort of thing. So I mean, we were excited that there was actually a difference and there was stuff happening, and we were excited that we could use this data for something, and so that part's really, really cool. But it's not maybe not as exciting to most people as some things. But you know, I think that the point is there's folks out there who've got a lot of data, and there's other folks that have some really good ideas what to do with that data, and you'll see from a, you know, a couple of talks, or not this next one, but the one after the last one. There's a lot of folks out there that are very, very concerned about this group of animal and collaborating very, very well. So that's kind of cool. So I kind of like that sort of idea. Now, again, my talks are very veterinary focused, not so much marine biology focused. And I guess I suppose that's because I'm a veterinarian, but you will see that veterinarians are getting a lot more involved in, well, health concerns of free-ranging wildlife. And that is true here with our killer whales as well. So the next sort of thing I was going to talk about is dental disease. So you know, there's I mean, dental disease is an affliction that's common amongst you know, many mammal species, especially as animals age, and certainly it's a reason for animals to drop out of the population. So you know, people always, well, I'll sort of diverge here a little bit, but you know, people like to attribute something called old age as a cause of mortality. Well, old age is not a disease, folks, but things that are associated with old age can be a problem. You know what I mean? I hate when people say that somebody died of old age or an animal died of old age. No one actually dies of old age. There's something that happens that may or may not be associated with old age, which is the actual cause of mortality. But dental disease in free-ranging wildlife is actually a big problem. So we do have this kind of cool group of animals called the offshore killer whale. So, we know we've got the resident killer whale, so southern and northern residents. We just talked about the southern resident killer whales that everyone's concerned about. Also in this area, of course, we've got the transient groups of marine mammal eating killer whales. And then sort of a third and slightly lesser known group of animals that occurs offshore here in BC and Washington are the offshore killer whales, sometimes also called offshore transient killer whales, but we'll just call them offshore killer whales. So a few years ago, we came across this individual. This is an adult female offshore killer whale. She's 059. She was first identified as an adult in the early 1990s. So definitely, an adult plus whale, so an aging whale. And she was actually identified in West Point, Alaska. These guys are known to be a distinct ecotype, as I mentioned. They're called offshore killer whales because they're observed most often in the outer continental shelf, as opposed to their residents and transients. And like those other two groups, killer whales are kind of funny. They're quite specialists, or for example, our resident killer whales are typically fish eaters, most specifically salmon eaters, and even more specific to that, they really like Chinook salmon. And then our transient killer whales, as I mentioned, are the marine mammal eating killer whales. And then this group of animals is kind of cool because their diet is quite unique, and that might have something to do with this kind of condition they get with their teeth. So that we identify different diets different ways, but one of the ways is by isotope. Analysis of stable isotopes, I suppose, from blubber samples. So we know their diet is quite distinctive. And their diet, why is this not flipping? We'll back to this way. So kind of interesting. They feed on animals that are at a very high trophic level, especially elasmobranchs, and those are our sharks and stingrays and skates, and some teleosts. So teleosts are sort of an advanced bony fish group of animals. So the severe tooth wear, these guys wear their teeth at a very, very different rate than other killer whale groups. And that's probably related to their prey. And what's been suspected for a long period of time is because they eat so many sharks and stingrays and skates, and that group of animals has a very particular type of scale called a denticle, and which is very, very bony, very, very rough. It feels like sandpaper if you've ever petted a shark or stingray. Pet them the wrong way, you can you can abrade your hand very easily when you kind of rough up against it. So we kind of assume that that's the cause of this. And in fact, the wear is not even on the teeth of these whales. The wear is a lot worse in the front teeth than the back teeth. And that kind of makes sense because those would be your teeth that you're kind of catching and kind of rubbing first on something that you catch. So like I say, so we've known about this for a long period of time. So these are the worn teeth that you're seeing here. Right, so normally these would be these long, kind of sharp teeth in a killer whale that but they've been worn in this individual right down to the gum line, right? So, and that's been described before, but I guess what was interesting for us to be involved with is no one's really used advanced imaging, and no one's really, a veterinary dentist has never kind of evaluated this condition and described it very well. And we know that periodontal disease may have contributed to emaciation and death, in this individual based on that. So that was kind of what was important for us as veterinarians, to get a little bit more involved and take kind of advantage of the situation and figure out what was going on. So in this particular, excuse me, case, but we had pathologists, we had Carissa, who was our veterinary fellow at the time, and a few other individuals from the Vancouver Aquarium, the Vancouver Aquarium's Marine Mammal Rescue Society, go out and help with this animal. So a full necropsy and his path was performed. Now, actually, this is a good example You probably heard of this condition in killer whales. This is that peanut head kind of thing. So you notice it kind of indents there. Another pet peeve of mine, like dying of old age, is people attribute, saying this animal has peanut head as the diagnosis. Well, no, peanut head just means the animal's skinny. It's not a diagnosis, it's just a description, right? So anyway, so this animal is extremely emaciated, very, very thin. The left and right mandibles on this animal were kind of detached and removed with as much soft tissue as possible. We took radiographs. Those are just our settings, but you can see kind of dental radiographs done on the animals. And we also threw that jaw through a CT using a standard bone and techniques and relatively thin slices, 3 millimeter slices through that on the CT. And then we had a veterinary board certified dentist as well as a veterinary board certified radiologist go through and kind of evaluate those things. So like I said, obviously the animal was starving at the end of its life for whatever reason. It was emaciated and sort of very severe atrophy. The gums were disgusting, quite honestly. They're macerated, malodorous, brown, kind of dying, dead. Everything that your dentist tells you when you're getting subjected to your periodontal treatments. Well, that's what this whale had, and then some. And obviously, as we showed before, it had the animal had severe wear down on these teeth, right? So they're worn down to the gum line. And then what happened is, of course, the pulp cavities were exposed, which allows bacteria, et cetera, to travel down the root of the tooth and cause periodontal disease as well, right? So that's a big deal because that's a good way for bacteria to track systemically and cause real serious disease. So, and the stomach had nothing in it essentially. So except for some parasites, and the skin had some parasites as well. So microscopic evaluation, the histology, the gingiva, so that's your gum, was too oddalized for analysis, so that had to do with postmortem artifact. But looking through the entire animal, there was no other kind of presumptive age-related pathology that could have contributed to mortality. So what that means is no other significant lesion was found both on gross necropsy and histopathology of submitted tissue, right? Now, as far as the teeth goes, everything was worn almost down to the gum line, and those pulp cavities were exposed, as I said. The alveoli were very widened, so that's the middle of the tooth, and irregular. So that means the bony part of the tooth was starting to get infected and remodeled, and the bone, as I was starting to get quite proliferative through. So that's quite extensive pathology. So you can kind of see this is now the bone on CT is being eroded right away. So it's not just the teeth, but the bone of the mandible is being severely infected and eroding away. So that's really bad, really bad tooth disease. So the likely, the cause of death based on all the investigation and imaging was really a combination of inanition, which means an inability to eat, and presumably related to aging of the teeth, right? And that the poor dentition in this animal actually was the cause of death, which means that what they kind of eat, going all the way back to the beginning, eventually causes them to pass away, which is not unique to wildlife, but it is very, very interesting that this group of animals has evolved to prey on a certain prey item when there are other prey items that they could probably eat, but they've decided to prey on an item that might cause them to have shorter lifespans than other killer whales. So these combined lesions, cause a whole lot of pathology. It may have led to secondary pathology and causing, systemic disease. So the animal may have had a septicemia, so bacteria throughout the organ, with the teeth as a root of infection. So I thought that this was actually a little bit more interesting because it was like a pretty cool diagnostic survey of an animal that we could actually touch and deal with. And I suppose that's one of our frustrations as veterinarians. We're often asked to, especially dealing with large animals in the wild, like killer whales, we're often asked to make a diagnosis and come up with a treatment plan that is very difficult to undertake without getting hands-on animals. And so that kind of brings us to this next case I'll talk about, which was a kind of a very um, trying sort of case for a lot of us to be involved in. And it was sort of the story of J50. It was a juvenile killer whale that would belonging to the southern resident group, the J-pod specifically, excuse me, that was found to be in pretty bad body condition. And well, here's the story. So big deal here is all these different people involved from all these different organizations, all kind of coming together to try and figure out what was going on with this whale. So this is J50 with her mom at the time. Photograph taken by researchers from SR3, which is a rehabilitation and marine mammal rescue group based out of Seattle. And essentially, this is kind of what we're dealing with. So this is back in 2018, before COVID, if you can imagine. I don't know if anyone remembers that time, but it was. And folks and researchers, both from Center for Whale Research and from NOAA, which is the US equivalent of our DFO, noted that this 4-year-old female, this J50, Scarlett was her name, was found to be extremely emaciated. Now she'd always been small for age, but now she started developing this peanut head thing, and this story became quite a thing in the media. So everybody, you know how everyone became a virologist when we had COVID? Well, at this point in time, everyone became a killer whale diagnostician, and everyone knew that peanut head was a specific diagnosis, which drove me crazy, as I mentioned before. But anyway, this animal had always had some trouble. But by June 2018, the animal was noted to be in really bad body condition. And some biologists had been following animals, noticed that she had really kind of fetid breath. So her exhalations were foul smelling. And then this technique called photogrammetry really kind of told the story. So going from May 2017, you kind of see the body conformation, right? Now progressing in August 2018, June, we're kind of already noticing that there's a problem, but she's got this real narrowing of the neck across here, so she's lost this nuchal fat, and then in 1 month even lost even more. So this is what they call peanut head, right? Because she's developing this peanut like shape, and that specifically means that she's lost significant amount of body condition. So this photogrammetry technique, which John Durbin and Holly Fernbach employed, and Lance Barrett-Leonard was also part of the team that originally created this technique, is really based on flying a drone at a very, very specific height above a whale, and taking a very specific image, which then takes a number of different measurements that are then kind of correlated back to something called an EP ratio, which essentially means that it's a body condition score based on these photographs, right? So looking at this animal, so these other guys would be normal animals and the normal body condition score. You can see this particular animal is dropping out. And we know from following other animals that once an animal has reach this kind of body score, these animals have passed away. So there's no animal that has ever survived that starts dropping below this ratio. Okay, so at this point in time, this is kind of when the veterinarians were called in. So we knew, based on all this research, that any animal that reached this body condition was going to pass away. And because this was an endangered population of killer whales, for the first time ever, veterinarians were asked to come up with a treatment plan to be delivered to this animal to try and save it, using diagnostic and medical techniques. So what this involved was for quite a period of time. This is at least now 6 weeks from the time we were involved. And you can see the timeline and what was done, of looking for these animals, following these animals, waiting for appropriate weather conditions and animals to be in a certain place, and researchers to be in, and veterinarians to be in a certain place, and trying to do some diagnostics and some treatment stuff. So, and every night there'd be a giant group meeting trying to figure out what could go on with this animal. So a lot of folks invested. Certainly the public was invested, but First Nations folks, government folks, private citizens, veterinarians from the U.S., from Canada, researchers from U.S. and Canada. So both countries heavily involved, and lots of NGOs and the rest of it. So. I'll talk more specifically about the veterinarian role. So again, it was my buddy Joe and I, and Hendrik from SeaWorld, and Stephen Rafferty, as well as Dr. Jim McBain, were kind of the core veterinary team involved with trying to come up with what to do. So to put it in perspective, this is like asking a pediatrician to figure out what's wrong with a severely underweight child that's not doing really well, without getting really near the child, and not really being able to lay hands and getting any kind of serious diagnostics on the child, right? So that's kind of the scenario we're faced with, and then eventually, essentially throwing darts at the child as the child ran around a football team or a football field. So it was kind of the analogy we used, and anyway, the important part was this was the first time anything was allowed to do so. As I'm making quite clear, so we had some serious diagnostic limitations is the title of this slide, which I probably should have just led with. But anyway, so no way to perform a physical exam. Any of those things that the veterinarians and physicians like to do, like take blood tests, to do X-rays and CT and MRI and ultrasounds and biopsies, and consult other specialists and come together. Well, I should take that away. We could consult with lots of specialists, but actually being able to lay hands on and do the things that we normally want to do to come up with a diagnosis, we just couldn't do. So what we could do is observe the animal. So we knew obviously that the animal was very, very emaciated, very, very skinny, and decreasing in body condition. So that was getting worse. It wasn't getting better. The animal was weak. We knew it couldn't keep up with the family as well as it should normally, and that was traveling further behind the family. When the family was moving, the family would have to wait for the animal to catch up. So intermittently, she'd have this weird swimming posture with the head kind of held higher out of the water. We kind of associate that based on animals living under human care as kind of being weak and also less buoyant. So you have to kind of work harder to thrust yourself out of the water as you lose fat, which keeps you buoyant, and so you have to work even harder, and so you kind of have to push yourself out of the water essentially to breathe. So kind of that abnormal posture. As I said before, she couldn't really maintain pace. We had the fetid breath thing based on observation. We could find feces based on drones, so we knew the animal was defecating, and we knew the kind of color of the feces was normal. Was that yeah? But there was no kind of evidence of ingestion of food. So these guys are food sharing animals. So they do catch food and then share among members of the pod. So even when the animal was with other members, we did not see it ingest any food, or sorry, we as in the researchers in the bigger group, right? So we did get a blow sample specifically from the animal, which had limited DNA, but it did show that there was a fungal organism that came out of there, but some of those are kind of normal. We did get some fecal samples, but they weren't from her specifically. They were collected from behind J16, so the sort of same matriline. And that I don't know, we should probably one day get the folks that do this fecal collection, but they have these trained dogs that can smell and identify where this fecal patch is. It's pretty amazing, actually. The dogs are incredible. I love that story, but you should delve into that if you get an opportunity. It's pretty amazing. So so we did a fecal sample from behind an animal based on the genetics from that. We knew that it was from J16, which is J50's mom. So we did do a bacterial culture, which you know, had a number of different organisms. Some of these can be associated with lesions in whales based on necropsies from wild animals, but also based on information from animals living under human care. And we knew that the feces had contracecum. Now, bear in mind, this is not J50's feces. This is her mom's feces. But you know, what we could say is, well, if the mom was exposed to this stuff, well, certainly the daughter was as well, right? So we have some parasites and we have a large number of different bacteria. So essentially, the challenge to us was, what can you give a killer whale at sea that will likely do no harm, but might possibly actually help, or at least mitigate some secondary problems, which would allow the animal to get over whatever was ailing it. So again, this is quite a frustrating position to be in as a veterinarian, but at least it was a step in a positive direction from, you know, as in actually being allowed to do something, right? So we know, again, based on necropsies of wild animals, and there are not a lot of them, right? So one of our problems is when whales die, they often disappear at sea, and we never get the opportunity to actually even you know, figure out what ended up dying or what ended up causing their death. So, but we do have a large, well, not a large number, but we do have some animals living under human care, killer whales, but also other species, right? So we have folks who know what kinds of problems those animals have had and what kind of bacteria have caused those problems. So, so we have some information based on other whales living elsewhere, and some dead whales from this particular area. And so we know what kind of medications have been used in killer whales and what their effects have been, and we know what kinds of medications will help parasites and certain bacteria. But you know, how to give that? There, you know, we probably can't give it IV because there's no way to catch this whale again. So we're limited to things that can be delivered into the muscle that would have some efficacy. And then we're also limited by our ability to deliver that stuff. So we had a dart system that can deliver about 10 milliliters of stuff. And then we're very, very limited by how often, you know, we can deliver medication. So choosing a medicine that could probably be delivered into the muscle that you know, 10 mils would be enough for this killer whale, but would have to be delivered every day was impossible, right? So, you know, this animal would disappear for days or a week or longer before it'd be in an area that we could, where it could be identified, found, and then, you know, even approached, as if weather kind of, you know, cooperative. So what we did choose, and we worked with pharmacologists and others, was a drug called cefovexin or cefovecin. Convenience is a kind of trade name for us. It's a fourth generation cephalosporin drug, so it has a wide spectrum of activity against bacteria that we know have caused problems in these whales. And it can be concentrated and delivered with, you know, with enough high enough dosage in this 10 milliliter dart to provide cover, and it also lasts a really long time. So it can last, you know, 7 to 10 or maybe even longer days with just one injection. So we use a DanInject pressurized dart. We use a 2-inch 60 millimeter straight needle, and then we did kind of change that a little bit. And then the other thing that we came up with was essentially a dewormer. ivermectin, which we could get into that with sufficient volume to be of a high enough dosage to be efficacious, thinking that parasites are relatively normal in cetaceans, but they can be out of control, especially in a young animal. And if this animal is already starving, then if we got rid of the parasites, maybe that would give the animal, if parasites weren't the primary problem, well, at least we'd give the animal a little bit longer to try and get over whatever was wrong with it. So this is how you dart a killer whale. We're relying on the biologists that have worked with these animals. You can see the animals don't surface for very long, especially the young animal. That's her. You can kind of see her in this area. So you're kind of just waiting for that. You can hear me. I have to repeat everything 3 times for some reason. It's probably because I'm not very smart. You get kind of a not very long, and that's it. So that's starting a killer whale. And that was the first time that we were allowed to dart a southern resident killer whale with a veterinary drug in the wild, anywhere. So that was a big deal. So we did get 2 dosages of drugs into her. That was me with the antibiotics. Joe Gatos did deliver ivermectin a few days later in another dart. At the same time, and this was kind of cool, we had folks from the Lummi tribe try to feed live Chinook salmon. So they would get in front of her and they would have live salmon from their hatchery, and they would, trying to feed her. And if she would actually take it, they figured we could put medicine into the fish, and that would be a great way to keep getting more medicine. But unfortunately, none of the animals wanted to take that animal. So now, the other thing that's happening is these capture contingency planning. So politically, there's very little appetite to bring in an animal, even if in distress, to a facility to diagnose, treat, and then hopefully put back. So even talking about that idea was a huge step for folks to even get around the table and going, okay, what can we do? So we did have a contingency plan to try and get the animal into a facility, and it would have actually been our facility that the animal would have come into. But the decision tree from the government folk was really that the only attempt to capture her would be if she was found completely alone, and not in physical or even sound contact with the rest of her pod, and in obvious distress. So that was the decision tree. Now, unfortunately, as you probably all know, we did not succeed. She continued to lose body condition, and the last time any one of us saw her was on September 7th, about 8 weeks from when we started following her. The veterinary team started following her and coming up with a plan. She was identified on September 8th, but that was the last time she was positively identified, and she's never been seen. So she was, considered to have passed away. So what did we learn? We've got folks out there, both on the US and the Canadian side, that do have a lot of expertise, that do like to work together, and that are available. And there are veterinarians and biologists and government folks and members of the public and skilled boat operators and all sorts of really great people out there that really want to help these animals. So they're out there. That was cool. And we know that even organizations that wouldn't normally want to work together did, and they worked together very, very happily and provided their services for free. Aquariums and First Nations and fish, hatchery operators and fishermen and government people and activists and all these folks that wouldn't maybe normally see eye to eye on every issue. everybody wanted to do the right thing, and everyone listened to everybody else, and that was cool. Um, we are obviously really limited by ability to, right now at least, to remotely diagnose and treat disease in free swimming orcas. No surprise, um, but there might be some out of the box things, and there's some cool project coming down the pipe, and we can probably be better even from a little bit from the distance. And drones are getting better, and AI is amazing, and photo recognition stuff and acoustic tags and all sorts of tech is coming along. So that's kind of cool. And also, of all those people and all those experts from all over the place, and even folks that were really concentrated on trying to do the best they could for this one individual animal, no one ever lost sight of the fact that there's a bigger issue going on in these animals, and they're facing some big issues that saving one animal won't help, even though we really wanted to. So where are we now? So we have some cool projects going on. Certainly the next animal will come down the pipe. The folks are out there. We're improving our ability to respond, our networks. We're trying really hard to create sort of the idea of an individual animal health system modeled, well, like we do with people. But we've got some really good evidence that things like individualized medical records and individualized medical care can help a population in distress. So a lot of that work is based on the Mountain Gorilla Project, Gorilla Doctors. That's also a UC, a University of California, Davis initiative. And essentially they have folks that have worked with a specific group of mountain gorilla that have been desensitized essentially to the presence of humans, and tourists regularly go and visit these animals. But the animals also are intervened with in a fairly regular fashion. They're dewormed for parasites. They're anesthetized to take off snares and human-caused injuries. They're anesthetized for vaccinations, for treatment of wounds, for treatment of infections, and that is the only population of mountain gorilla that's actually in recovery. So that's really cool, and it's not an awesome thing that in this world that we live in, we have to kind of get to this point that we have to provide individual, medical care to populations. But unfortunately, that is the world we're kind of living in. The populations of these animals are shrinking, and we have definitely impacted the world around us. And if we want to keep some of these populations around, that might be kind of where we're getting to. And just to leave things on a positive note, though it's not a killer whale, this is the story of Chocolate, who's a gray whale, and she, sorry, oh no, I think it's he actually, was given you can see the satellite tag, which has caused a massive infection. Now, I will say that the satellite tag was placed by the Americans, and it's kind of gone through, and you can see the infection now on both sides of this animal. So this animal was identified to be in a state of disease caused by human activity. You can see the sort of abscessation necrosis. And based on our work with J50, we were allowed to go out and deliver antibiotics to this whale. So you can see there's a dart going in. And you can see he pooped. So they feel it. They might have thick skin, but they certainly feel it. Now the difference with Chocolate compared to J50, you can see that was Paul giving the fist pump there. So the difference here is this is not the same dart shot. So we had to deliver 4 darts over 2 days. There you can see actually 2 darts given into this animal, because this, I don't know if you know, but gray whales are actually a little bit bigger than killer whales. So even though we had the really concentrated medicine, we had to get this animal 4 times. Now, luckily, she did have this satellite, or sorry, I keep saying she, but this is a he, transmitter in there, which was the cause of problems, but it was also a good way for us to be able to track this animal. So in this case, that wound healed up amazingly. And so I think it's just kind of cool that we're getting to the spot where folks are getting a lot more comfortable in allowing folks to get out there and do our best, particularly if animals are kind of, suffering from the direct effects of human activity. So I just want to end it off on a positive story. And then just a shameless plug here about our facilities. So we are the Vancouver Aquarium Marine Mammal Rescue Society. Although we are under the Vancouver Aquarium umbrella, we are our own registered charity as of last September. So if you like our work, vammr.org to come and visit us and see what we're up to. And I guess our most recent patient that's in the news is Moira, our loggerhead sea turtle who came in cold stunned from Vancouver Island from Sook. And she's turned around and doing really, really well. And we're kind of cautiously optimistic that she will be an animal that'll be released later on. Yeah, no, we're active. I know sea turtles aren't marine mammals, but for whatever reason, everywhere in North America, any Marine Mammal Rescue Society also does sea turtles. They kind of get lumped in. Anyway, there you go. That's the end of me. And yeah, I'd love to answer some questions.
Thanks so much, Marty. That was a very sad story about Scarlet. Kind of watched that one unfold, and I know everybody's doing everything they could for her, but yeah, a wild animal is that's a tough one to deal with. So thank you very much for sharing that story with us, and also for the other diagnostic things. So questions are open. You can put questions into the chat or just unmute yourself and ask your question. A couple of you had mentioned about the scat dogs, and so Deb put in a shameless plug for a recording on the wonders of the Salish Sea. There's a link there for it.
Giles.
Yeah,
Awesome.
Giles. Yeah, she presented.
Yeah, she's great. Yeah, that's who
online.
was actually driving the boat when I took the dart. Yeah, or when I shot the dart. Yeah, she's awesome.
Yeah, she's great. So Tom had asked, he said he did a night dive while in Hawaii to see manta rays. The guides asked that we not touch the animals as they swoop by, as it would rub off a film which was on their skin. Do orcas have a similar type of film on the skin as an additional protective layer?
No, orca skin is very, very soft, and no, so what you are alluding to though is as an elasmobranch, manta rays have these denticles, and it is that rough kind of skin that can cause an abrasion that can also cause the wear of the teeth. Now, they do have a mucus layer that sits on top of that, and I think that's probably what the folks were alluding to, that you didn't want to rub off, because that is a protective kind of immuno barrier for them. Yeah, exactly.
So on killer whales being a marine mammal, you wouldn't, their skin would be, more
No,
so
so
to our
they're
skin.
yeah, the cetacean skin is interesting in that they don't even have a keratinized epithelium. So what we've got is we've got live cells that have nuclei on our skin, and then on top of those we just have this keratin layer, which is kind of almost dead skin that doesn't have nuclei anymore, that doesn't divide. But in cetaceans, they have nucleated cells all the way to the top. And those are constantly turning over. Their kind of modus operandi is to turn over their skin constantly. So they heal wounds incredibly well, and they kind of just slide their skin layers over a wound, which is incredible. But no, they don't really have any sort of additional kind of thing like a skin like a fish does. No.
So while we're waiting for other people to pop questions in, I sort of have one for you on the sort of slide at the end that was showing the lesions and how it's increasing, and you had like the 3 different colors for the different pods of southern resident killer whales. And there seemed to be peaks in 2007, 2010, and 2016.
Yes.
That was that correlated with anything else, like with warm water or any other? Was there anything that could sort of be put to that?
Another blip. I don't think so. But there are very obvious blips there. Yeah, you're absolutely right. So I don't, for example, think those are El Nino years. But there might be something else going on there too. But we don't. It wasn't obvious to us that there was any sort of one causative kind of environmental factor in those years. No.
And the lesions don't seem to be necessarily leading to a higher mortality in them, not like what it did in the North Atlantic great whales.
That's correct. Right.
Okay.
They aren't yeah. Yeah. Nothing was specifically correlated with a higher mortality rate. No.
Okay, thank you.
Of course. Yeah. Good questions.
Sheila, go ahead.
Yeah, kind of along the same lines, Joan. With Joan's question, I know you said no sign necessarily for warming waters, but I mean there are a lot of bacteria in the ocean in general, and I'm just wondering with the exposure of the skin to all of those, and then perhaps increasing populations of bacteria and viruses that potentially are leading to those infections, especially if there is a lesion of some sort. Because that's still an unresolved issue with the sea stars. So I'm just trying to kind of make this link that I shouldn't.
Yeah. No, the sea star one is very obviously we were very involved with the sea star mortality as well, where initially everyone jumped on this on a virus, a coronavirus, as being the suspect organism. But I think in fact what that turned out to be was more a hypoxic event, so a low oxygen event that may have been more of an environmental thing than we thought, which caused the overgrowth of anaerobic organisms in general, which took out normal organisms that would be on the sea star, and then abnormal bacteria kind of took over. But that concept does translate very well to the idea in killer whales. So yeah, absolutely. There's a myriad of microorganisms in ocean water, and they're very normal, and most of them have a very specific purpose and a whole pile of reasons to be there and belong in the ecological chain of events. So bacteria and protozoans and fungus and viruses and oh my gosh, you name it, they're all in there, diatoms, etc. But yeah, any one of them, well, not any one of them, but some of them can definitely be potentially pathogenic. Vibrios, for example. So vibrios are ubiquitous in the marine environment. So that's a genus of bacteria, but they're also a common cause of disease in fish and a common cause of disease in marine mammals. But that's also true with us. Our skin has a very specific microflora. We love Streptococcus and Staphylococcus aureus, in particular. That's a normal part of our skin. But it's also, those two genus of bacteria are also the most common causes of our skin diseases, flesh eating disease, that sort of stuff. So it's really when our skin immunology changes that we become susceptible to the normal bacteria that would be always on us, causing problems. So whether that's a penetrating wound, whether that's a burn that degrades our immune system so much that allows deeper tissue that would be normally protected to now be introduced to those bacteria, whether our immune system goes down or whatever, there's usually a combination of events, right, that cause a real bad skin infection. So I assume it's the same thing in whales. It's not like it's a brand new bacteria causing a problem. It's probably a bacteria or virus or fungus, if it's an infectious problem. So that's a whole other thing, infectious versus non-infectious. But if it is an infectious problem, then it stands to reason that it's probably something that's normally around them for the most part. There are exceptions, right? So as the world changes a little bit, animals and people get exposed to pathogens they wouldn't normally be exposed to. So they'd be exposed to things that we haven't developed a good immune response to. COVID is a good one, right? Like coronaviruses in general are probably the most common cause of the cold in us, but we're relatively well adapted. But a new coronavirus comes out and bad things happen until we all kind of figure it out and our immune systems kind of figure it out, kind of thing, right? Anyway, I think I've lost track of what I was trying to tell you anyway, but yeah.
No, that was very interesting, actually. And maybe, sorry, if I can just throw out one more thing. Do you think, here we go with the pollution thing in the Salish Sea, but do you think that could be part of, perhaps the either the immune systems of some whales, or eating habits or something like that could be affected, maybe not caused, but affected by pollution in the Salish Sea?
Yeah, 100%. I think anything that modulates your immune system or has potential to, or it changes the way things that you eat, things that you're exposed to. Yeah, absolutely. That could be a cofactor for sure.
Mm, mm. Thank you.
No worries.
Jumping into some of the questions in the chat. Deb was wondering, are there any other southern resident killer whales whose health you're specifically worried about right now?
Well, all of them, I guess. I never stop worrying. But no, right now, this very moment, there is not. Now, unfortunately, some of that has to do with the residents are just starting to come back. It's usually May and June and through the summer are the big times of the year through September that we see them around these parts. Otherwise, they're kind of off the coast and down to Monterey and off Washington, Oregon, where not a lot of people are seeing them. So no, but this in about 2 or 3 months is a time of year that we'll start seeing whether calves made it from the previous year and whether animals are coming back in worse condition that they left in and that sort of stuff. But today, no, but in 3 or 4 weeks, maybe.
Mm.
Yeah, I heard that the southern residents were actually up hanging around not too far off from where the herring are lining up to spawn, which is kind of interesting. But I guess, herring spawn attracts everything. And
You betcha.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's like a watering hole in Africa.
yeah,
Everybody gathers around. And so even if you don't normally eat the herring, things that you might want to eat are coming in to eat the herring, right?
exactly.
Yeah, very
Yeah.
cool. Yeah.
Carolyn was wondering, are they finding any viral species in the samples that you are able to check?
Yeah. So we talk a lot about microbiome and a lot of molecular techniques. So there's a lot of sequencing that goes on with those samples, and yeah, there's a myriad of different viruses, herpes viruses, and yeah, are they potentially pathogenic? Some of them, yeah, maybe. Are they just in the water? Yeah, a lot of them. So yeah, unfortunately, you get quite a soup. So teasing that soup out is very difficult. But that whole idea of microbiome, where you look at all the genetics and all the sequencing, and the sort of metadata analysis, where you look at how all of the DNA changes over time. That's kind of a cool thing. So not essentially individual species, but how the whole microflora as a whole, as a population changes. That's an interesting way to look at those samples. Yeah.
And Elizabeth was asking, she said, first of all, thanks for the great talk. Do killer whales get the flu? She read this morning that marine mammals like seals
Yeah.
are dying from the latest version of bird flu.
Yeah, and seals have died of avian influenza for quite some period of time. So particularly on the East Coast, there've been episodic die-offs of harbor seals and gray seals, mostly harbor seals, I think, from avian flu or avian influenza. And a mortality event has been recognized in South America and in sea lions, so not just the phocids, but now notariids. And then we did have some seals here in Washington State that have passed away that associated with flu as well. So yeah, you're absolutely right. So marine mammals can get avian flu, much like people and other species can. It is kind of a cool influenza in that it does like to jump species and cause problems. And yeah, the assumption is that it's very possible for a cetacean to get the flu. I don't believe one has been specifically diagnosed as dying of the flu, but I think we think it's quite possible. Yeah.
Oh, thank you. Nothing else in the chat right at the moment. You did talk about dental disease with the offshore killer whales, and I heard of that before, of their teeth being worn right down. Now, totally different diet, but do we see that at all in resident killer whales or transient killer whales? Like when you've done, you know, the necropsies on the
Yeah.
occasional
Not,
dead one, do
not,
you see teeth wear?
you will see teeth wear, and you'll certainly see tooth decay, and that is, you know, part of aging, unfortunately. Like our teeth, you know, eventually, you know, you'll have some gingival recession, and you'll get exposure of pulp and deep-seated infections and stuff. So yeah, we certainly see some dental disease across species, but not that uniform wearing down of all the teeth kind of at the same rate. Well, I mean, front faster than back, but you know what I mean. So we'll see like individual teeth rotted out, and older animals you'll see with a lot of teeth rotted out. But yeah, and as you know, elephants are the kind of the neatest thing. The elephants have like almost a clock ticking because their teeth migrate, right, out out from the back and down their jaw. And they rely on those because they're eat a lot of foliage. They have to masticate that and chew it up and to be able to digest. And there's a finite number of teeth. So once they lose their last one, that's it. So that it's okay, you're done. And they migrate at a very specific rate. So yeah, very sort of interesting.
Hmm. Yeah,
It's
no,
like, okay, your time here is done, and this is how
Yeah.
we're going to solve it for you. Yeah.
I did not know that about elephants, but I have been told that in killer whales, they don't have baby teeth. Whatever teeth they're born with is their teeth for life. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. They don't regrow teeth, no. But they don't use them that much. All things considered, like they're grasping. They're not for chewing. So they don't need to chew. They swallow their food quite whole, right? So with the food sharers, it's quite conceivable that they can just pass things on to each other, even if they do have tooth wear and stuff. With the offshores, though, I think what happens is not only can't they catch food, but because they've worn down things so much, it's the bacteria that get up there and then become systemic that becomes an issue for them. Yeah.
Go ahead, Sheila.
That begs the question, and I'm not an evolutionary biologist, but generally organisms evolve with specific characteristics or traits or habits that allow them to live in any kind of ecosystem. Oh, hi.
Sorry, this is Winston.
Yeah, hello, Winston.
He's
So,
missing his can.
oh, I see.
Hmm.
Could it be that that the offshores, were never really intended to be eating these really scaly prey, and that, for some reason, I mean,
They're forced into it.
yeah.
Well, I mean, it brings up a really interesting kind of whole thing because we've got biological evolution that kind of happens at a relatively very slow rate. But then we've also got social evolution that happens at a very fast rate, right? So, people, we do things that we were never designed to do because it's what we have to do to keep our society. So, we live in places we wouldn't normally live. And if we don't have heating and stuff, we wouldn't be here kind of stuff, right? And so it is possible that the animals had to socially evolve faster than they biologically evolved in order to take advantage of prey that was opportunistic to them, where they were healthy and robust and able to reproduce and keep their population viable. But the sacrifice is that you die at an earlier age,
Yeah.
I suppose. Yeah. But as a population, you're still successful even if you don't age as well as another population.
Wow. Wow. Interesting. Thanks. Yeah.
Oh, back on the two, not a question, but more of just a statement. Naomi had added in that the horses on Sable Island only live to be about 10 years.
Yeah.
Because the salt rots their teeth.
Well, you know, I've been on Sable. I've been lucky enough to be on Sable twice in my life, and my gosh, what an incredible place. And I've hung around with those conies, and yeah, I even have yeah, no, that's an incredible experience. And yeah, I think the teeth definitely have something to do with it, but I think a lot of it has to also do with periodic starvation. So they are so susceptible. They're living on the edge, right? Again, they're not animals that were ever supposed to be on Sable Island. So they're living off grasses and scrub that isn't particularly nutritious. And if you've ever been on Sable, there's no trees or anything, and the winds and storms can get quite crazy. And if it's a bad year for the grasses, yeah, the population of can be, the 2/3 of the horses can die, and then the population builds up over the next, 8 or 9 years, and then exactly right, every 10 years they kind of crash. So yeah, and certainly if their teeth are not working and they're trying their hardest to kind of chew up this really rough grass, yeah, that's gonna be a factor. Yeah, what an incredible place though. I love that. I love Sable Island.
I think Naomi would probably second that one, that I know she has been there.
Oh yeah.
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 I don't see any other questions, and we are approaching 9 o'clock. So if anybody has anything, you better put it in there quickly, or I'm going to let Dr. Marty get some sleep before his big day again tomorrow, taking care of animals.
I have people for that. I'm too old to actually do anything anymore.
What?
No.
I know that you take care of everything at the aquarium, from
Right.
stars to
Yeah.
right up to everything, and you're very well respected for everything that you do.
Wow. I think you have me confused with the other guy, but yeah, anyway.
Yeah, perhaps. I have to say that, before we let you go, thank you so much for taking care of Chocolate the gray whale.
Yeah, my pleasure.
That is amazing that you were able to do that, and and turn that infection around. And yeah, that it's just like the disentangling technology. As that developed, these other things are going to develop as well, and maybe the next J50 is going to have a different outcome. So
I hope so.
Yeah.
Everybody wants that. Yeah.
All right. Well, everybody's saying thank you and terrific.
Thank you,
and all
everybody.
the rest of that. So thanks so much, Dr. Marty, for joining us, and everybody else who joined in tonight as well.